These are some of the sights and sounds of Pennhurst, the state institution for the mentally retarded. It's located in Spring City, Chester County. In 1908, when the institution first opened, the man in charge bitterly complained to the state that the conditions were already overcrowded. He transferred many of the patients to Q1, a classroom building. Many of them are still there. In the 18th century, the mentally retarded were often ignored, punished, and exploited. Today, things are supposed to be different. Modern 20th century man is much more scientific and civilized. Today, we no longer punish the mentally retarded. We don't exploit them either. We have come a long, long way. Now we ship them 25 miles out of town to a state-operated institution and forget them while they decay from neglect. Pennhurst was first opened 60 years ago when the answers to the problem of mental retardation were considered to be segregation and sterilization. Sterilization, of course, is a thing of the past, but the archaic practices of segregation and custodial care are still with us and seemingly with the approval of society. The 2,800 children, young and old alike, residing within the confines of Pennhurst are for the most part protected from society, and the granite wall of ignorance and social blindness protects society from them. These unfortunates are being deprived of their dignity and self-respect. Why? Because only a very, very few seem to care. The horrible and almost inhumane conditions that prevail at Pennhurst are not the fault of a handful of dedicated doctors, administrators, and attendants employed there. No, the children, as they are all called, who are rotting in their cages, cribs, and beds, can thank society for their dreadful plight. We have forsaken them, not in the sense of what we have done to them, but because of what we have failed to do on their behalf. Unlike other minority groups, the mentally retarded have never had a brilliant orator to trumpet their suffering and appeal to the conscience of other men. Many of these children have always been without the benefit of parental love or guidance, partly because of the stigma of shame attached to their illness. They have been abandoned and placed at the mercy of the state. In the case of Pennhurst, the state has failed to do its moral duty. During the next 4 evenings, TV 10 will delve into the problems of Pennhurst. We hope to find out why the current conditions exist. What are the problems facing the people running the institution? What has been accomplished in the past? And what must be done to correct the injustices the mentally retarded have endured much, much too long. We entitle our investigative report, Suffer the Little Children. There is not only a shortage of help here at Pennhurst, but also a lack of money and an overextension of professional duties. As we mentioned last evening, the personnel employed here are for the most part dedicated, but even the most sincere people can be pushed beyond their professional capabilities. One case in point are the physicians. There are only 9 MDs and 2 psychiatrists working at the institution on a full-time basis. They are responsible for 2,800 sick children, society's children. This fact sometimes forces medical personnel to work beyond their limitations and serve as disciplinarians. One case in point, Dr. Jesse Fear, a medical doctor. I question him on just how he handles patients with behavior problems.
We have found of late that it is quite effective to downgrade him a little bit and put him on a a log cottage with autistic-type children or hyperactive children, a classification that used to be called low grades, or that sort of thing, and it offends their dignity somewhat. They don't like it.
Well, you offend their dignity on purpose by putting them on this profoundly retarded ward. In other words, say a child with an IQ of, say, 69 or so would be put on in a cottage with children with an IQ of 10 or 20, and this is how you lower their dignity. Do you find this an effective measure?
We have found it in some cases to be effective, but in other cases, why, it doesn't work out.
Doesn't this degrade the person who is being disciplined to the point that he may regress?
I doubt it very much. Actually, what we're trying to do is degrade him to a certain extent amongst his fellows here. They make fun of him then for a while afterwards. But I don't think there's anything inhumane about it or anything of that sort.
How else do you deal with patients that are hyperactive?
I have given some of them intravenous pentobarbital sodium on occasion. Otherwise, they would do harm to themselves and others.
In other words, you drug them?
Absolutely.
Dr. Fear, can you cite just one example which shows the institution's attitude towards children that need just a little extra help?
John is a problem that I think can be resolved if he is exposed to the right form of therapy. And so far here, we have not been able to show any benefit from what we have given him. There are places, and specifically Eastern State has a program that seems to help this type of case quite a bit. I had tried to get him into a Catholic organization. Turned out that his IQ wasn't quite high enough for them to accept him. They
so
do not
where is
accept
Johnny
retardates.
Now, Doctor?
They do not accept retardates.
What's Johnny's IQ now?
69. But that is a relative thing.
Where is Johnny now?
Johnny is on Q2.
You have just heard about Johnny. He's been causing discipline problems here at Pennhurst, so they thought they would send him to Q2. We thought you would like to see where Johnny lives. Johnny, can you talk?
Yes.
Do you like it here at Pennhurst?
No.
Why not, John? Let me ask you this, John. Do you remember living anywhere except Pennhurst?
No.
Do you like talking to the people up here?
Yeah.
Why, John?
And they like to talk to me.
How about the other kids, the ones that can talk? Do they like to talk to you, too?
Yes.
Do you like to talk to them better than the kids up here?
Yes.
Have you been talking more lately or less?
Less.
Why are you here in Q2, John?
I did something I wasn't supposed to be doing.
And so they punished you and put you here?
Yes.
Do they do this all the time to you, John?
Yes.
Johnny used to talk a lot more before he came to Q2, but ever since he's been here, he's talking less all the time. This boy, was he mentally retarded when he came to Pennhurst?
He was mentally retarded in the sense that he did not receive proper education. He came from parents that were delinquent themselves.
In other words, this boy was normal as far as his mind and being retarded was concerned.
He can progress to a normal level.
But he never will as long as he's here at Pennhurst, is that right?
I cannot say that because...
what are the chances?
Chances are poorer here than they would be where they have a program set up for this type of case.
There are too many Johnnies in Pennhurst this very evening. Unless the state provides more competent personnel and facilities, they will remain just where they are, stripped of their dignity, lost to society. Just how long will that be? Well, I guess since they are our children, it's up to us, isn't it? Some zoos in the United States spend more money for the daily upkeep of their large animals than the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania allows Pennhurst to spend on its 2,800 retarded children. 5 of the largest zoos spend $7.15 per day on their wards. Pennhurst can only afford $5.90. By the way, 80% of that $5.90 pays the administrative costs at the institution. This leaves a meager 75 cents to provide for the basic day-to-day needs of the retarded. The zoo also usually wins out over the retarded when it comes to accommodations. Very rarely do you find crowded cages at the zoo, but it's quite common to find residents bunched into small cottages at Pennhurst. I spoke with the superintendent of Pennhurst, Dr. L. Pekonsky, about the overcrowded conditions at the institution.
Yes, our rated capacity is 1,984, 1,984. And
How many people do you have?
We currently have 2,791.
How many people do you need here at Pennhurst?
I'd like to see our 1,500 people on in our personnel complement. And in order to pay these extra 700 people, we'd probably need about $4 million.
Doctor, when was the last time the Secretary of Health and Welfare or the Governor visited here at Pennhurst?
Secretary of Welfare was here approximately 6 weeks ago.
What were his comments after he saw the deplorable conditions, the rundown facilities, the overcrowding, the lack of help? What was his feeling? What did he tell you?
Secretary George has said that let's do everything we can to alleviate conditions at Pennhurst and place Pennhurst in top priority for clearing up things.
In other words, he put Pennhurst ahead of the other state institutions?
He made this statement, yes, sir.
Did he promise any money or help from the state?
He said that if we needed money, he would see that we got it.
And you need $4 million.
Again, ideally. I don't intend that Pennhurst is going to get $4 million. I think we're going to get some help.
I also spoke with the business manager here at Pennhurst, Elmer McSurdy. I questioned him on the cost of repairing the buildings.
Can't touch a building unless you're ready to spend $1 million or $1.5 million. Now, as long as the buildings stand the way they are, the law doesn't require that they come in and close it down.
Some of them should be closed down, shouldn't they?
I presume if the labor industry were to inspect them as they stand now with the idea in mind that they must meet their requirements, they would be closed.
Could you tell us a little about the problems you have faced purchasing necessities since Pennhurst has been on its most recent austerity program? Could you tell us a little about the situation with the braziers?
Well, there was an order for braziers. It was canceled. We were given the opportunity to justify the requisitions.
How did you try to justify it?
On braziers. Well, on that one, I just wrote self-evident.
What happened then?
It came back with a large group of requisitions for more justification.
More justification. Did you justify it further?
I had one of our doctors write a justification.
Did you finally get them?
No.
People seldom think of food as being a problem. I spoke to the dietitian here, Elizabeth Roberts.
We have some patients who cannot tolerate whole food. We have to puree that food, but they get a well-balanced diet. We puree meats, vegetables, and we try to put bright color in this pureed mass of food so that it is attractive to the eye. You know, they say eye appeal and taste appeal is that's what we strive for.
The facts presented in this report must be rather alarming because they are true. After comparing the zoo and Pennhurst, one must get the impression that society's animals are more important than society's children. By the looks of things, one must wonder. Tomorrow night we will bring you part 4 of Suffer the Little Children.
Attaboy, now put the next one on. That's it.
This means happiness to most, but to the mentally retarded, it means life itself. This boy and 213 others just like him are enrolled in special rehabilitation programs at Pennhurst. Thanks to these limited projects, they are improving their mental and physical skills by leaps and bounds. The director of several of these programs, M. Harris Schaefer, explains how a little help in money can go a long way.
A program has been developed at Pennhurst State School and Hospital, federally funded, to work with and rehabilitate the severely and profoundly retarded. Here we see music therapy, in which we are working with the emotional levels of the youngsters and developing emotional response. Many of these youngsters had never had the opportunity to handle and work with tools that so many normal children take for granted. Learning to cut, learning to crayon, learning to develop their ABCs. Feeding is a very, very important part of the program. It's so essential that the youngsters be made to be self-supporting, self-contributing, and develop dignity and worth through being able to care for themselves. And so the total interdisciplinary staff works together in order to help the youngsters achieve in this area. Many of the youngsters in the program were unable to walk. Many were unable to talk. Many were unable to dress themselves, to socialize. These are the areas that are being worked upon by the staff. The empathy that one is able to develop in relating to other objects in the world, to animals, this is important to the youngsters. First opportunities in many cases, a feeling, a pride. Programming for the blind and visually handicapped is an area which is the first of its kind in its totality throughout the United States. Pennhurst is showing leadership in this particular area. Many of the youngsters at present are away at a camp for the blind for a 2-week period. Again, we see an interdisciplinary team working with the youngsters, boys and girls, in order to attain the possibility for community placement. In many of these programs, we've developed to the point where an 8-month period has enabled youngsters to develop 14 months of growth during that space of time. A work activity center is a newly developed program at Pennhurst. A project involving 12,000 items for Smith, Klein, and French is now coming to a close. This has been a new experience, not only for the youngsters, but for the institution, and it's hoped that many other projects will be available. These children are able to earn money for themselves, by which they are able to use for books, magazines, things of their own choice. They develop the experiences that may be necessary in the community.
Mr. Schaefer, can you tell us a little bit more about other programs here at the institution?
Yes, there are many programs at Pennhurst to enhance the dignity and worth of the residents within the institution. We are very proud of these.
Some of them pertain to vocational rehabilitation, psychological counseling, town task programs, other activities programs, nursing and medical programs and services throughout. Indeed, we're quite proud of the developments at Pennhurst. We have been leaders in the state and leaders within the United States, and we're very thankful for the support and leadership from the superintendent and from the agencies of the Department of Public Welfare.
It's hard to believe that blocks like these can mean so much. Proper facilities and funding has given over 200 boys and girls at Pennhurst somewhat of a new lease on life. However, 2,600 others have little to look forward to because of a lack of funds, facilities, and staff. Recently, Governor Raymond Schaefer announced that $43.5 million in revenue would be turned back to the Commonwealth. Many of us are hoping some of that money finds its way to Pennhurst. Meanwhile, 2,800 retarded children there will be hoping and praying that the governor hasn't forgotten them.
Tonight we conclude our 5-part special investigative report, Suffer the Little Children. Before we begin tonight's final installment, it is with great regret that I tell you that reporter Bill Baldini, who has worked continuously on the series, has practically collapsed from sheer exhaustion and is unable to read the words which he has written to finish the series. So it is with considerable pride that I conclude this report for him. Bill wrote as follows: "We have brought the sights and sounds of Pennhurst into your homes in their most brutal and constructive forms. We have explored the reasons why the horrendous conditions exist, the problems facing the people running the institution, and what they have accomplished. Tonight we'll show you another view of Pennhurst. This one is from the inside out." What would you like